was a man who had dropsy. What's dropsy? Any of you medical people familiar with dropsy? The commentary itself doesn't say a lot about it. It says it was a medical problem that was caused by a gathering of water in certain sections of the body, but doesn't give us any symptoms or anything. We don't really know anything about this man. It's just that he was there, and it was obvious that he had not been invited. So there's a chance that he could have just heard the commotion and walked in, wanted to see what was going on. There was a man who had dropsy, and Jesus asked the lawyers and Pharisees, is it lawful to cure people on the Sabbath or not? But they were silent, so Jesus took him and healed him and sent him away. He wanted him out of there. But they were silent. So Jesus took him and healed him. And then he said to them, if one of you has a child or an ox that has fallen into a well, will you not immediately pull it out on the Sabbath day? And they could not reply to this. You get the picture? This is a typical Sabbath. Jesus always was in worship on the Sabbath. It was customary for rabbis or people in charge of the synagogue to invite visitors, if they had credentials, to come and have a word with the congregation. And so it was normal for them to have asked Jesus, and it looks like to me and to a lot of commentators that that's exactly what had happened. That they had asked Jesus to come and enjoy a lunch at the house of the Pharisee. And it also looks to me like they could have planted the man with dropsy because they wanted to criticize Jesus and catch him doing something that he shouldn't do. And of course, they were basing their allegation on the writings of Moses. And you are aware of the fact that Moses never, ever wrote that you should not heal the sick on the Sabbath. That was in the writings of the rabbis. It was not in the writings of Moses. Jesus wanted to execute what he was going to do very rapidly. And so he took the man and healed him. You know what the next thing he said to him was? Go home. Go home. I've got work to do here. I cannot get it done if you're going to be here, because you are already the center of attention. And so Jesus shipped the man out. And Jesus asked the people who were in charge of the luncheon, if one of you has a child or an ox that has fallen into a well, will you not immediately pull it out on a Sabbath day? And they could not answer him. Jesus had already asked their questions. He had already provided them with answers. He had nailed their mouths shut. They were stuck. The man is gone. He's been healed of his dropsy. We don't really know what dropsy looks like or what it is. We have some medical people here. We're not really familiar with what they were talking about. But what Jesus did was he got the dear soul out of there so he could go to business. What had Jesus noticed that made him want to talk to them? When Jesus noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, how do we skip from the dinner to the wedding banquet? I don't know. But Jesus knows what he's doing. Do not sit down at the place of honor in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who invited you may come and say to you, give this person your place. And then in disgrace, you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled. Listen to that little sentence there. Friend, move up higher, then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. I find that stuff cutting. I find that stuff amazing and appropriate for our little church, our little culture, our little environment of people who come first and those who just show up. That's an amazing little text. He said also to the one who had invited him, it had to be a Pharisee. He was no doubt a member of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was a collection of scribes and Pharisees who were really the rulers of the people. And when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors in case they may invite you in return and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you. For you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. It's amazing what Jesus did. He healed the man with the dropsy. Said, go on home. Go on home. I don't need you. I'll call you later. And then he attacks the internal culture of that little church. Incidentally, these Saturday services really became the original model of the Christian church. This was one of Jesus' only opportunities to show us how to organize. I like the cover that was on your bulletin today. I can find it.
Me too.
It says, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers. And it looks like one of the prisoners being held by our president in captivity behind a prison fence. That's frightening to me. But the text is a good one. One of the dinner guests, on hearing this, said to him, catch this, catch this. This is just another ordinary person sitting at the table. He may have been invited, he may not have been invited. But he says to Jesus, blessed is anyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then Jesus said to him, someone gave a great dinner and invited many. At the time for the dinner, he sent his slave to say to those who had been invited, come, for everything is ready now. But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said to him, I have bought a piece of land, and I must go out and see it. Please accept my regrets. Another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I am going to try them out. Please accept my regrets. Another said, I have just been married, and therefore I cannot come. So the slave returned and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and said to his slave, go out at once into the streets and lanes of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. And the slave said, sir, what you ordered has been done, and there is still room. And the master said to the slave, go out into the roads and lanes and compel people to come in, so that my house may be filled. For I tell you, none of those who were invited will taste my dinner. This is an amazing set of texts to me. It looks to me very much like Jesus is trying to lay out some details, not a lot of details, but some important details about how we should organize our church. And it ought to always start with bringing them all in, regardless of their condition, regardless of how they smell, regardless of what's wrong with them. Bring them in. Sit beside me. Come, share our fellowship. Share our joy together in the Lord. And that's the beginning of inviting them to come to Jesus. Like I said, I love shivers through my spine. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers. Or don't just wait until you find out what's wrong with them. And then let them hear the words, "You're not welcome here." Now, large crowds were traveling with him, and he turned and said to them, "Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciples. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciples. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and estimate the cost to see whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to ridicule him, saying, 'This fellow began to build and was not able to finish.'" We don't want to be part of that culture, do we? That we started to build and we gave up. We left, turned around, went someplace else, where our criticisms would be more welcome, where our judgments would be more pleasant to the ears of the average person. God bless you. Bless the Lord, O my soul.